On October 5, 1994, 29-year-old Megan Beth Johns was found murdered in her apartment at the Apple Apartments on West Walnut Hill Lane in Irving, Texas. When she failed to show up for work at Smith Barney in Las Colinas, concerned co-workers contacted her apartment complex. A maintenance worker entered through the back sliding glass door and discovered Megan face down on her living room floor. She had been stabbed multiple times. The crime scene indicated a violent struggle, and the apartment had been ransacked. Investigators noted there was no forced entry, suggesting Megan likely knew her attacker or had let them inside willingly. DNA evidence was collected from the scene, along with other forensic materials. Irving police detectives immediately launched an intensive investigation. Between 50 and 70 people were interviewed in the first 48 hours, including neighbors, co-workers, friends, and family members. Fingerprints were collected, alibis were checked, and polygraph tests were administered. Detective Tom Rowan led the investigation and would carry Megan's photograph in his wallet for years to come. Megan had been in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction and had been sober for 5 years at the time of her death. She was actively helping others who were struggling with similar issues. She had recently moved to a nicer apartment closer to her workplace and was serving as maid of honor in a friend's upcoming wedding. She had a 9-year-old half-sister named Bridget Johns who looked up to her. Despite the extensive initial investigation, no arrests were made. The case eventually went cold, though it was never officially closed. The Irving Police Department continued to review the case periodically over the years, hoping advances in forensic technology might provide new leads. Megan's family and friends refused to let the case fade from memory. Her half-sister Bridget Johns Scott visited the Irving Police Department at age 21 after having a dream about Megan. She met with Sergeant Tom Rowan, who still kept Megan's photo with him. Megan's childhood friend Kelly Chance became a vocal advocate, creating a Facebook page called Justice for Megan Beth Johns and appearing on podcasts to keep attention on the unsolved murder. The nature of the crime scene suggested the killer may have been searching for something specific when they ransacked the apartment. Investigators considered various theories, including the possibility that someone from Megan's past or someone she had helped in her recovery work might be involved. The fact that Megan's neighbor lived in close proximity to her apartment meant that person would have had easy access and knowledge of her routines. In June 2025, more than 30 years after the murder, Irving police conducted another review of the evidence using modern DNA analysis technology. A DNA sample from the crime scene was retested and produced a clear genetic profile. This profile was entered into CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, which is a national database of DNA profiles from convicted offenders and crime scenes. The search produced a match. The DNA belonged to 61-year-old Daryl Eugene Thorne, who had been living in the apartment next door to Megan at the time of her murder. On June 26, 2025, Thorne was arrested at his current residence in Lancaster, Texas, and charged with Megan's murder. Court records indicate that Thorne had been convicted of aggravated robbery in Harris County in 2000, 6 years after Megan's death. That conviction required his DNA to be collected and entered into the national database. However, it took advances in DNA testing technology and the decision to retest the original evidence before the connection could be made. The arrest brought a measure of closure to Megan's family and friends after 3 decades of waiting. Bridget Johns Scott, who was 9 years old when she lost her sister, is now 40. Kelly Chance, who spent years advocating for justice, saw her efforts validated. Detective Tom Rowan, who never stopped carrying Megan's photo, witnessed the case finally move toward resolution. The case demonstrates both the limitations of forensic technology in the 1990s and the power of modern DNA analysis to solve cold cases. It also highlights the importance of maintaining evidence properly over time and the value of periodic case reviews as technology advances. The DNA that was collected in 1994 remained viable and usable 31 years later, ultimately providing the evidence needed to identify Megan's alleged killer. Daryl Eugene Thorne faces murder charges in connection with Megan Beth Johns' death. The case that began on an October morning in 1994 with an unanswered phone call and a worried coworker has finally moved into the judicial system, where the evidence will be presented and examined in court. Blake Tyler Chappell was born on February 7, 1994, in Panama City, Florida. He was the youngest son of Melissa Becker, who described him as a mama's boy. Blake was known throughout his community in Noonan, Georgia, as kind, talented, and imaginative. Friends and family remember him as someone who was genuinely friendly with everyone he met. He had an infectious laugh and a great sense of humor that could make anyone smile, even on their worst days. Blake was the type of person who would give someone the shirt off his back if they needed it, and he was always willing to help the people he cared about most. Blake loved skateboarding, racing his dirt bike on trails near his home, drawing, and playing Guitar Hero. He absolutely adored music of all kinds and enjoyed being outdoors, Season of Justice. He loved steak, seafood, and especially beef jerky. Blake was also a budding entrepreneur who would buy energy drinks and sell them to his friends at school for a slightly marked up price. His mother recalled that Blake would sometimes ask her to make extra food for his friends so he could give it to them if he knew they were hungry. Halloween was one of Blake's favorite holidays. He loved baking, especially around Halloween when he would make candy apples and sell them to the community. At 16, he still went trick-or-treating and dressed up in costumes. That year, he dressed as Winnie the Pooh. Blake was interested in possibly becoming a TV anchor someday, but according to his mother, he was more passionate about becoming a lawyer. October 16, 2011 started as an ordinary day for Blake. It was the day of the East Coweta High School homecoming dance. Blake and his mother spent the entire day shopping together, looking for the perfect tie for the dance. Later that day, he was dropped off at his girlfriend Rion's house, where they took plenty of pictures together before heading to their favorite sushi restaurant. Blake was 17 years old and had his whole life ahead of him. October 16, 2011 would be the last day anyone would see Blake Chappell alive. In the early morning hours after the dance, Blake left his girlfriend's home located off Mary Freeman Road in Noonan. He was walking to his friend Austin's house, which was approximately 3 miles away in the Summer Grove neighborhood. As he walked, Blake sent several text messages to Rion and her mother, apologizing for being at their home so late without their permission. At approximately 5:30 in the morning, Blake sent a text to Rion explaining that he had been stopped by a police officer who had asked where he was going and had asked for his identification. Shortly after that encounter, Blake continued his walk and sent his final text message within a few minutes, complaining about the cold weather. That text message, sent around 5:30 that morning, would be Blake's last known communication with anyone. Later that morning, Rion, her mother, and Austin began worrying about Blake when they learned that he had not made it back to Austin's house. A desperate search for Blake began immediately. His mother, Melissa, reported him missing shortly after learning that her son was nowhere to be found. The Noonan Police Department initially investigated Blake's disappearance as a missing persons case, treating it as a possible runaway situation. Despite extensive searches over the following weeks, authorities found no sign of Blake. It seemed as though he had simply vanished.
On December 19, 2011, 2 months after Blake disappeared, passers-by reported finding a body in a small creek that runs alongside the driving range at Summer Grove Golf Club, Project Cold Case. The body was discovered near the Summer Grove neighborhood in East Newnan. It was Blake. He had been shot and killed, and his body was left in only his underwear. The medical examiner confirmed that Blake died from gunshot wounds. For Melissa Becker, the call informing her that her son had been found dead was the one she had been dreading. She would later describe the moment as indescribable, saying she relived that day every day, and that her world stopped that day. The case immediately shifted from a missing person investigation to a homicide investigation. Shortly after Blake's remains were discovered, the Newnan Police Department offered a $20,000 reward, the largest reward the city had ever offered at that time. Police held most of the case details under tight wraps, and the department denied requests for medical reports. Investigators explained they needed to keep certain details confidential because information only known to those involved could be crucial for developing suspects. Years passed without arrests. The Newnan Police Department investigated multiple leads and cleared several persons of interest, but no charges were filed. In 2011, police received a letter with an anonymous tip about Blake's case. Several years later, they received a second letter, and investigators believed both letters were written by the same person. Detective Marcos Gonzalez made public appeals asking the letter writer to come forward again, assuring them they could remain anonymous, but emphasizing that police wanted to talk to them to re-examine and verify their information. In September 2021, the Newnan Police Department launched an Unsolved Murders page on their website, hoping to spread awareness for Blake's murder along with other cold cases. Melissa Becker never gave up fighting for justice for her son. She partnered with the nonprofit Season of Justice to raise money for a billboard, pleading for answers. The billboard was placed along Highway 1941 in Jonesboro as a constant reminder that Blake's case remained unsolved. Melissa wanted people to know that her son deserved justice, and that her family, still mourning him day after day, deserved to know what happened and why. In March 2024, the Newnan Police Department served 3 search warrants in the Sharpsburg area. Detectives collected new evidence, which was then handed over to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation for further testing and analysis. This development came after investigators recently identified new leads and information in Blake's death, though authorities did not specify what the information was. On September 12, 2025, nearly 14 years after Blake's death, the Newnan Police Department announced that Scotty Elliott Smith, a 38-year-old Coweta County resident, was arrested and charged in connection with Blake Chappell's murder. Fox 5 Atlanta. Smith had not been previously investigated, but was recently identified as a person of interest. During multiple interviews with detectives, Smith confessed to the murder of Blake Chappell. He was charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, concealing the death of another, and tampering with evidence. Smith remains held at the Coweta County Jail. Authorities have not shared a motive for the case or specific details that led to the killing, and the investigation remains ongoing. The arrest came as a result of countless hours of dedication by the Newnan Police Department's Criminal Investigation Division and the direct professional assistance of the Coweta County District Attorney's investigators. For Melissa Becker, who spent over a decade fighting to keep her son's case in the public eye, the arrest brought a measure of closure she had desperately sought. Anyone with additional information about Blake Chappell's murder is asked to contact Detective Marcos Gonzalez or Lieutenant Chris Robinson at the Newnan Police Department.